The night Alexander was born, the sky over Pella glowed with a strange, shimmering calm, as though the stars themselves leaned closer to the earth, curious and unafraid. And in that ancient quiet, the world seemed to pause and listen, not to kings or armies or prophecy, but to the soft breathing of a newborn child whose destiny would one day stretch far beyond the places where maps ended. Yet on that first night, he was only a baby wrapped in linen, warm against his mother's chest, while outside the palace walls, the summer air moved gently across the hills of Macedon, carrying with it the scent of pine and distant rain. His mother, Olympias, believed deeply in omens, and she watched the open window as though she expected a god to lean through it, whispering the shape of the child's future. She spoke to him in low tones, telling him that the world was wide and full of wonders, and that fate had brushed its fingers upon his brow even before he opened his eyes. And though Alexander could not understand her words, something in the room shifted, the air thickened, the shadows softened, as if an unseen presence agreed with her. Some whispered that Zeus himself had marked the boy, that lightning had danced silently above the palace roof just moments after his first cry, leaving no scorch or thunder, only a faint golden trace that flickered through the clouds like a blessing. But the newborn slept on, peaceful and unaware of the murmurs spreading through the palace corridors, of the priests who examined the sky, of the servants who knelt without knowing why dot as years unfolded gently, like papyrus unrolled beneath careful hands. The boy began to wander the world around him with a curiosity that seemed older than he was. Even before his tutors came, before Aristotle, before the scrolls of distant lands, before he learned the stories of gods and heroes, Alexander felt the pull of the horizon. He would slip away from the palace, barefoot through the grass still damp with morning dew, and climb the low stones outside the city, sitting beneath the shade of olive trees while the world slowly woke around him. Birds would flit between branches, the first breeze of dawn brushing against his hair. And in those quiet moments, he felt something watching him, not in a way that frightened him, but in a way that felt like being guided, as though something vast and ancient walked beside him in silence, matching each breath to his own. Sometimes he would lift his head suddenly, catching the glimmer of a shape at the corner of his vision, the faint outline of a lion, golden like sunlight on bronze, or the hint of a winged shadow across the earth. But when he turned fully, the shapes would dissolve like mist. Yet he did not doubt they were there. There was one night in particular that he remembered more clearly than any lesson, any march, any coronation to come, a night when childhood and myth seemed to drift into one another like clouds merging in the sky. He had slipped from his bed while the palace slept, drawn outside by a wind that carried no cold and no warmth, only an unexplainable sense of invitation. The moon hung low and heavy, glowing with a pale blue halo that touched the ground in soft, trembling circles of light. Alexander followed the gentle shimmer until he reached the small rise just beyond the gates, where the earth sloped toward a valley filled with sleeping grass. He sat on the crest of the hill, hugging his knees, and stared at the sky, The stars that night were not still. They seemed to breathe, slow, deep, like the world inhaling and exhaling all at once. And as he watched, he felt the same breath fill his chest, pressing softly beneath his ribs in a rhythm that was not his own. The wind quieted until even the sound of his heartbeat felt like an interruption. And then he saw it, a light descending from the highest point of the sky, not falling, not streaking, but drifting, like a single drop of sunlight wandering through the dark. As it neared, it grew until it became a shape made of soft, swirling luminescence. Neither god nor beast nor human, but something between, something that felt as ancient as the stones beneath him. Alexander did not move. His fear and wonder balanced each other so perfectly that he became still, like water undisturbed. The glowing figure hovered a few steps away, its form shifting like smoke caught in moonlight. A faint warmth washed over him, the kind that felt like hands resting gently on his shoulders. In that moment, the stars brightened sharply, as though recognizing the visitor, and a low hum vibrated through the earth, soft enough to be mistaken for imagination. The figure leaned closer, not with a face, but with presence, and a voice reached him, not through his ears, but through the air around his heart. "Child of the boundless path," it whispered, its tone neither male nor female, neither old nor young, but carrying the weight of sand, sea, and sky. "The world will stretch beneath your feet like a river seeking its end. You will walk farther than any king, but your greatest journey will be inward, into the quiet places where courage sleeps and destiny waits to be woken." Alexander swallowed, his throat tight, though the words felt soothing, almost like a lullaby. He wanted to speak, to ask who or what stood before him, but the presence spoke again before he could gather his thoughts. "To not seek to conquer," it murmured, "but to understand. For the greatest empires are not built from stone, but from the hearts that walk beside you. Remember the night sky, remember this breath, and when the world grows loud, return to the silence that lives beneath your ribs." The figure began to fade, dissolving like mist touched by morning light. Alexander tried to reach out, but his hands passed through nothing, only a soft warmth clinging to his skin. The stars dimmed back to their ordinary glow. The moon lifted higher, and the wind stirred again, rustling the grass around him. He remained there for a long time, though time itself seemed to loosen around him, turning minutes into something shapeless and gentle. When he finally rose and walked back toward the palace, the world felt different, not larger, not smaller, but deeper, as though layers of meaning lay hidden beneath every sound, every shift of the wind, every glimmer of light. That night, he did not feel like a prince. He felt like a thread woven into something greater than kingdoms, a story whispered by stars, carried by wind and watched by unseen eyes. And as he slipped back beneath his blankets, the warmth of the present still lingering in his bones, Alexander closed his eyes, knowing he would never again look at the night sky without feeling it watch him in return. As Alexander grew, the memory of the night on the hill remained with him like a warm ember, carried in the folds of his heart, quiet and glowing. And though he never spoke of it to anyone, not to his mother, not to his tutors, not even to the loyal horse he would one day tame, the presence of that shimmering figure lived in the space between his breaths. A secret companion who stirred whenever the wind grew still or the stars aligned just so. But it was not until the night he dreamt of the sapphire lion that he began to understand the shape of the destiny that waited for him. He had fallen asleep after a long afternoon of training, his young muscles aching in the pleasant way that comes from learning the edge of one's strength. And the cool night seeped through the open window of his chamber. The palace was quiet, shadows melting into shadows, and as he drifted off, the boundary between waking and dreaming softened until it felt like slipping into warm water. At first, the dream was simple, the echo of hooves, the distant murmur of waves against unseen shores, the scent of pine drifting across a field that stretched beyond sight. Then the darkness brightened into a deep, shifting blue, like the color of the sea seen from beneath its surface. Alexander found himself standing in a vast plain where the ground shimmered with flecks of light, as though every grain of dust held a hidden star. Above him, the sky glowed faintly, not with sunlight, but with something softer, like a lamp burning behind a veil. He felt no fear, only the warm stillness that comes when the world holds its breath. From across the plain, a shape appeared, slow, steady, deliberate. Its footsteps made no sound, yet the earth seemed to hum beneath each stride. As it came closer, the shimmering air parted around it, revealing a lion unlike any creature Alexander had seen or heard described. Its fur was not gold or tawny, but a deep sapphire blue, glowing with a gentle inner light that pulsed in rhythm with the boy's heartbeat. Its mane drifted like threads of smoke touched by moonlight, and its eyes, vast, luminous, impossibly calm, held the colors of dawn and twilight merging. The lion stopped only a few steps away, lowering its head until its gaze met Alexander's. Something ancient stirred behind those eyes, something that felt like memory, older than mountains, older than the sea. Alexander's breath steadied without his willing it. The lion exhaled, and the warm breeze that flowed from its breath seemed to curl around him like a cloak. The air shimmered, and from somewhere deep, not spoken aloud, yet clear as if whispered directly to his ear, a voice rose, soft as a lullaby. "You walk between worlds," it said, its tone rich with gentleness and weight. One foot in the realm of mortals, the other in the pathways of the unseen. Many rulers conquered lands. Few conquered themselves. Fewer still walked with the gods. Alexander did not answer. He felt the dream itself asking him to listen, not speak. The lion circled him once, its body moving with grace that felt more like drifting than walking. "You seek to know why the stars watch you," the voice continued, "but the cosmos does not watch without purpose. You were born to walk far, but not merely to claim. You will cross deserts where even shadows fear to linger, mountains where the air itself sleeps, and oceans whose depths whisper of worlds forgotten. And in all your travels, you will never be alone. The lion paused before him and lowered its massive head until its nose almost brushed the boy's forehead. Alexander felt a warmth spread through him, not hot, not sharp, but soft and full, like a cup overflowing with calm. "I am your guide," the lion murmured, not to victory, but to clarity. "When the world becomes loud, when the weight of command bends your breath, when the path ahead splinters into doubt and desire, listen for the quiet beneath the noise. I will be there." The lion's mane rippled, sending small waves of glowing blue drifting into the air around them. Then the ground beneath Alexander shimmered, the stars within it swirling in slow patterns like water stirred by a gentle hand. The sky above darkened, not ominously, but like a curtain being drawn for rest. The lion stepped back once, its sapphire form growing faint around the edges, becoming light, then mist, then memory. Its voice reached him one last time, soft as a mother's touch, smoothing a child's hair. "Follow the whisper of your heart, Alexander. It will lead you farther than destiny ever could." The dream dissolved into the soft warmth of sleep, and Alexander woke before dawn, the palace still wrapped in shadow. The blue light of the lion lingered behind his eyelids whenever he blinked, like after images of truth too delicate to fade quickly. He sat up slowly, breathing a calm he could not name. Outside, the first bird of morning called, its song echoing softly through the courtyard. At that moment, he felt it, not a presence watching him, not a voice speaking, but a sense of belonging, as though something vast had acknowledged him, chosen him, walked with him. He placed a hand over his heart, surprised to feel it beating not with excitement, but with an unusual serenity. And though he would grow into a man who commanded armies and marched across continents, this was the dawn that shaped him most, the quiet morning, when a sapphire lion walked from the realm of dreams into the corridors of his soul, promising that wherever he traveled, the myth within him would walk as well. Years passed like slow-moving clouds, and Alexander grew from a curious boy into a young man whose spirit carried both gentleness and fire. Though the fire burned quietly, wrapped in patience and wonder rather than the hunger for conquest he would one day be known for. In those early years, he wandered not with armies, but with thoughts, dreams, and the lingering presence of the sapphire lion, whose silent guidance lived within him like a lamp that never dimmed. When he first crossed into the vast desert east of Macedon, not as a leader, but as a wanderer accompanying a small scouting party, he did not yet know that this land of shifting sands would be the place where the second of his mythic guides would reveal itself. The desert stretched wide and endless, its dunes rising like sleeping beasts beneath the sky, and everything moved slowly. The wind, the heat, even the sun seemed to drift rather than climb. The others complained of the dryness, of the stillness, of the way the horizon refused to grow closer. But Alexander felt something different, something watching, waiting, whispering beneath the surface of the sand like a quiet breath. He rode ahead of the group at times, letting his horse move at its own pace. And every now and then he would pause and listen, because it felt like the air carried words too faint to hear, but too deliberate to ignore. One evening, as dusk spread across the sky in soft layers of rose and violet, the party made camp near a cluster of weathered stones half buried by time. The wind had been strangely calm all day, barely stirring dust. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a breeze began to form, gentle at first, then stronger, circling the camp with a rhythm that felt intentional, as though testing the edges of its own presence. The others retreated into their tents early, exhausted by the day's heat, but Alexander remained outside, sitting with his cloak wrapped loosely around him as the desert cooled into quiet. The stars emerged one by one, small lanterns in the immense dark, and the crescent moon hung like a silver blade above the dunes. He closed his eyes, letting the breeze brush against his skin, breathing in the scent of sand, stone, and distant night. The wind shifted, not in direction, but in character. It no longer brushed him lightly. It curled around him with purpose, tugging at the edges of his cloak, wrestling the sand in a slow spiral around where he sat. He opened his eyes and saw that the air in front of him had begun to shimmer, the way heat does above a sun-baked road, except this shimmer was cool and faintly luminous, like moonlight filtered through water. The breeze became a soft hum, and Alexander's breath fell into rhythm with it, slow and even, as though something guided the movement of his lungs. The shimmering air thickened, gathering itself like dust pulled together by invisible hands, until it formed the outline of a tall figure, not solid, not flesh, but shaped from wind itself. The figure's body was made of swirling currents of air, its limbs shifting like drifting clouds, its eyes hollow but glowing faintly, and its hair moved in long streams that seemed to merge with the night sky. When it spoke, the desert answered, the dunes shivered, the stones vibrated softly, and the air resonated with a voice that was everywhere and nowhere at once. Child of the sapphire lion, the wind figure murmured, its tone vast yet gentle. You walk into lands uncharted, not by foot, but by spirit. Few hear the desert's voice. Fewer still understand its purpose. Alexander felt no fear, only the familiar calm that visited him in moments touched by the divine. He bowed his head slightly, not out of submission, but respect. The wind figure extended a hand, or rather, a swirl of soft glowing air shaped like one, and the breeze carried its touch to Alexander's cheek. He felt coolness sink into him, soothing, grounding. I am Eurus, the figure whispered, the wandering wind, the quiet guide of travelers, the voice that rises from empty places where men hear only silence. But there is no silence in the desert, Alexander. Only speech too ancient for mortals to recognize. The air thickened around him, carrying fragments of distant echoes, whispers of old kingdoms buried beneath sand, laughter of forgotten travelers, the sighs of storms long past. You are a seeker, Eurus continued, driven not by thirst for land, but by thirst for meaning. It is this thirst that draws the attention of the wains. For those who seek with the heart rather than the sword are rare in your world. Alexander closed his eyes, letting the wind rush past him, and within that breeze he heard faint traces of voices, soft warnings, gentle encouragements, songs he did not understand but somehow recognized. You will cross deserts yet more vast than this, Eurus said, his voice deepening, becoming layered with countless tones. You will chase the edges of the world, always believing that something waits beyond the horizon. And you will be right. But know this, wanderer of futures. The horizon you pursue is not merely of earth, but of the self. Power will tempt you. Glory will call to you. But you must remember the stories hidden in silence. A gust of wind unfurled sharply, spiraling sand into a brief pillar of shimmering grains. The figure's form flickered, its edges dissolving into the air before reforming again. When you stand upon the brink of doubt, Eurus whispered, listen for the desert's breath. When others shout, seek the quiet. When storms come, remember that you carry the calm of the sapphire lion in your heart. Together, these truths will keep you from losing yourself to the shadows of ambition. The wind began to fade, the swirling figure thinning into strands of silver air. I will follow you, Eurus said softly, as long as you walk paths where silence breathes. Call upon me, not with words, but with stillness. The figure dissolved entirely, scattering into the breeze like petals caught in an unseen tide. The hum faded, the sand settled, and the night returned to its usual quiet. Though now it felt richer, filled with subtle movement, subtle intention, Alexander sat alone beneath the moon for a long time, breathing slowly, letting the last traces of Eurus swirl around him. He placed a hand over his heart, feeling both the calm of the sapphire lion and the soft whisper of the wind moving beneath his ribs. The desert had spoken, and he had listened. And though he did not yet know where his path would lead, he understood something deeper than geography, that he walked with guides not bound by earth, and that destiny was not a marching army but a quiet, patient force carried on wind and starlight. The night after Alexander left the desert temple behind, he camped beside a river so still it looked like polished obsidian laid upon the earth, a surface so smooth that even the stars above seemed hesitant to disturb it with their reflections. And though his campfire burned low and soft, offering only a faint halo of warmth around him, he felt no fear. Instead, a deep, drowsy quiet gathered around his thoughts, as though the world itself wished him to rest. The river whispered faintly, not with the sound of flowing water, for it barely moved, but with something subtler, something like distant voices softened by time, or the faint echo of dreams half remembered. Alexander closed his eyes for a moment, breathing the cool night air, and when he opened them again, the river had changed. It no longer mirrored the sky. Instead, it glowed from within, faint silver currents drifting beneath the surface like threads of moonlight woven through shadow. Drawn without knowing why, he stepped closer, his boots making almost no sound on the soft earth dot as he neared the edge. The air shifted, a hush, a pause, the kind of breath the world takes before revealing something sacred. Then the river stirred, not like water, but like memory waking from sleep. A figure rose slowly from its shimmering depths, not breaking the surface but emerging through it, as though the boundary between water and air no longer cared to exist. The shape was human at first glance, tall and graceful, formed from the river's own silver light, its outlines shifting gently like ripples touched by a breeze. When it fully rose above the surface, Alexander saw its face, serene, knowing, impossibly calm, a face that seemed both familiar and forgotten, as though he had dreamed it before he ever lived. The figure spoke without speaking, its voice arriving in his mind like a soft echo of his own thoughts returning after a long journey. "Alexander," it whispered, "traveler of many realms, seeker of many truths. You stand before the river of echoes, where the past remembers its own heartbeat and the future listens with quiet anticipation. Its eyes, pools of shimmering silver, studied him gently, not with judgment, but with understanding of something ancient that had watched ages rise and fall like tides." Alexander felt his breath deepen, his body relaxing as though lulled by a lullaby woven from moonlit water. "Why have you come?" the figure asked, though its tone suggested it already knew the answer. Alexander didn't speak. The river seemed to absorb sound before it formed. Yet the figure nodded, reading the quiet longing in his chest, the unspoken ache to understand not his destiny, but himself. The being extended a hand made of shifting light, and the river behind it swirled into soft patterns like memories gathering into shape. "Then listen," it murmured, and the water lifted, forming scenes that hovered in the air like fragile visions. At first, Alexander saw moments he recognized: his childhood laughter, his first lessons, his first doubts. But then the images changed, showing him things he had never witnessed, yet somehow felt connected to: ancient kings walking beneath twin moons, warriors laying down their weapons beneath the blessing of a forgotten god, and a child with eyes like his staring at a different sky centuries before he was born. "These are echoes," the figure explained, "fragments of the great tapestry that flows behind all living hearts. You are not the first to wonder who you are, nor will you be the last. Every soul drinks from the river of memory, though few see its waters. What makes you different is not the destiny that follows you, but the silence you carry within, a silence deep enough to hear the truth." Silver light rippled across its form as it stepped closer. "Your path will lead you across continents, through triumphs and sorrows, through nights where the stars sing your name and days where shadows stretch long behind you. But remember this: greatness is not the roar of lions or the thunder of armies. It is the quiet strength that remains when the storm has passed." The river's glow softened, its edges dissolving into gentle mist. The figure placed its hand lightly over Alexander's heart. He felt no pressure, only warmth, like the first sunlight after dawn. "When the world becomes loud," it whispered, "when glory blinds or ambition burns too fiercely, return to the stillness inside you. There you will find me, and through me, yourself." With that, the figure stepped backward into the river, its form shimmering, then dissolving into silver ribbons that sank beneath the surface. The river grew still once more, dark and calm and quiet as sleep. Alexander stood for a long moment, the night breeze brushing softly against his face, the distant stars flickering like lanterns hung above a dream road. When he finally stepped back, he felt lighter, not with joy, but with clarity. The kind that settles gently in the heart and waits with patient certainty. The fire crackled softly behind him, its glow inviting him to rest. He lay down beneath the open sky, and as he drifted into sleep, the river whispered its last echo of the night, a soft, steady murmur like a mother's hum, letting him know he was exactly where he needed to be. Days later, as Alexander continued eastward with the quiet confidence his encounters had imprinted upon him, he reached a land where the wind no longer traveled freely and the world seemed wrapped in an ancient hush. A silence so deep and old it felt as though time itself had chosen to rest there. Curled gently around the base of a towering mountain whose peak vanished into swirls of mist, the color of faded starlight. And though his companions spoke in low voices of spirits, omens, and forgotten gods said to live in its heights, Alexander felt drawn to it not with fear, but with a serene pull, as though something familiar waited within the stone. At dusk he dismissed his men and climbed alone, each step soft and slow, the air thinning around him until every breath felt like a whisper borrowed from the world. The higher he climbed, the quieter everything became. No birds, no insects, no shifting stones, only the steady rhythm of his heartbeat echoing like a distant drum. When the last traces of daylight dissolved, the mist surrounding the peak began to glow faintly, casting the mountain in a tender silver radiance. Alexander stepped into it, feeling the mist brush against his skin like cool silk down as he reached the summit. He found not a cliff or snowy plateau, but a calm, flat expanse of smooth stone bathed in soft light, as if the moon had laid a gentle hand upon the mountain's crown. At its center sat an ancient figure carved entirely of stillness, neither stone nor spirit, but something between the two, cross-legged, eyes closed, hands resting lightly upon its knees. Its body shimmered with a slow pulse, as though its form inhaled and exhaled the time around it. Alexander approached with respectful quiet, sensing he had entered a place where moments did not pass but slept. Before he could speak, the figure's eyes opened, and within them he saw not pupils, not color, but spirals of slow-moving galaxies, stardust swirling gently as though caught in a dream. "You have climbed into the cradle of time," the figure murmured, its voice deeper than silence yet softer than wind, each word arriving in Alexander's mind with the gentleness of falling snow. "Few come here, fewer are permitted to remain." It studied him, its gaze neither warm nor cold, but impossibly patient. "Do you know why you have been guided to this place where time rests?" Alexander shook his head, though in his heart he sensed it had something to do with the lion, the spirit of the winds, and the silver figure of the river, threads weaving together into something he could almost understand. The figure nodded slowly, as though hearing the thought. "You walk the edge between destiny and choice," it said. "Greatness lies not in how far you go, but in how carefully you step through the moments given to you." Many kings rush forward, trampling time beneath their feet. But you listen, you breathe, you seek. The mist thickened around them, swirling gently like clouds drifted in sleep. And with each curl of vapor, Alexander felt the passing of years, not his own, but the world's, as though standing in a place where centuries curled up like resting animals. The ancient figure lifted one hand, and the mist parted to reveal vistas of time itself, empires rising from dust, only to return to it. Stars being born in brilliant fire before fading into quiet ember. Children across ages, learning, dreaming, becoming. Time, the figure whispered, is not a river, nor flame, nor wheel. It is a sleeping child, gentle and vulnerable. Treat it with respect, and it will guide you. Push it, and it may stumble. It lowered its hand and looked at Alexander with a gaze heavy with the softness of deep understanding. You wish to know who you are, not the man history will remember, but the soul beneath. The air shifted, growing warmer, as though the mountain itself exhaled. The figure leaned forward slightly, then listened carefully. Your journey will take you farther than any who came before. You will forge paths across the world, uniting peoples, shaping stories, touching realms unseen. But the truest measure of your greatness will not be your victories. It will be the moments you choose to pause, to breathe, to recognize that even the mighty must rest. This mountain teaches only one truth. Even destiny must sleep. A soft wind circled them then, stirring the mist until it became a luminous cocoon. The figure's form grew fainter, its outline dissolving into tiny motes of light. Carry this stillness with you, it whispered as it faded. And whenever the weight of command becomes too heavy, return not to this mountain, but to the quiet inside your own heart. The mist drifted away, the summit dimming to its natural starlit hue. The ancient figure was gone, leaving only a faint glow on the stone where it had sat. Alexander stood alone, yet not truly alone. He felt as though time itself had placed a gentle hand upon his shoulder. The night around him was vast and tender, humming with the deep calm he had been gifted. Slowly he descended the mountain, each step lighter than the one before, as though the world had softened just for him. When he reached the base, the stars above shimmered like slow-breathing lanterns, and for the first time in many days, Alexander felt not ambition, not urgency, but a profound and peaceful sense of belonging, as though he were exactly where the sleeping heart of the world wished him to be.